Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another podcast, and I have here Rand Faied with me. Welcome, Rand.
Thank you for having me.
It's lovely to have you here today, and a topic that really is important, I think, for all of us is emotional regulation. And, and with that comes what if you're dysregulated and how to deal with that. Can you first tell us what emotional regulation is? We hear it a lot. I'm regulated or I'm dysregulated. What do we mean by being regulated?
Another word for that is commonly used for emotional dysregulation is being triggered.
Okay.
So it's like where you feel like your emotions are taking over, right? And I can explain this in a scientific way where our brain, we have the prefrontal cortex. So that is the part of our brain that is responsible for critical thinking and logic and controlling, having everything under control. And we have the amygdala, where all the emotions are stored. When something happens, something triggers you, your emotions becomes, over flooding. When you're over flooded with emotions, it takes over your brain. So it's like literally disabled the prefrontal cortex. And when your prefrontal cortex is not working, you can't think straight. You can't plan. You can't make decisions.
So that's what the prefrontal cortex is responsible
that's
for.
What it is, yeah.
Planning,
logic.
Decision-making, logic. So all of a sudden that's like shut, and then you've got these emotions.
Yes. So then you can't think straight and you're flooded with emotions. And the funny part is triggers can be anything really. You may not even be aware of what triggered you, right? It can be a smell, it can be a noise, a music or a specific song, a person, a place. It can be really anything, a word sometimes. And when that happens and you are like emotionally triggered and emotionally flooding, you can't think straight. And you see it in conflict where people, you try to talk them logic, they're not listening. And they can't listen because that part of their brain responsible of critical thinking is not working.
Okay. So you mentioned that you may not know what triggered it. That's one, I guess, a challenge. But the other thing is to know that you're triggered. I'm guessing sometimes people can be triggered and they don't even realize that they're being triggered.
Yeah.
So you did mention that the emotions are going high. Is there another way to know whether you've been triggered?
Usually you feel it in your body. Most of the people won't have that awareness is like, I'm being emotionally triggered, or they would say to you, I am upset, I'm really upset, or I'm angry, or I'm really sad all of a sudden, I don't know what's going on. But if you find them emotional, teary, you feel it in your body, you feel it in your tummy, especially your guts, you feel it in your muscles. So these are like the sign in the body and emotionally that can tell you, okay, something is not right.
Yeah, so it feels like there's a storm happening inside of you and you just feel that you're not right. You don't feel settled, I'm guessing.
Yes. That's exactly right.
Yeah, okay. So then do we need to know the trigger? Is that an important part of the process?
It absolutely is. So there are steps for emotional regulation, which is part of being emotionally intelligent. I think it's a crucial skill for everyone nowadays to be emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence have two parts, okay? One part of it is understanding oneself emotions and being able to regulate it and manage it. Two is understanding other people's emotions and being able to support them. We'll talk about the first part.
Okay.
So part of being emotionally intelligent is to find out what your triggers are, what triggers you, okay? And then how you're going to, one, either avoid your triggers if you can, or face your triggers, or change your triggers. Like, for example, if your trigger is a place, let's say this room here, something bad happened to you in that room, okay? Every time you come to this room, you feel it in your body, you feel it brings up all of the emotions from that incident. I would advise you then to try and create good, happy memories in this room. And it's association, because originally you associated the room with something bad. and now you're associating it with something good. So this is how we change our triggers.
As you're speaking, I'm thinking my first response in my head was, okay, then what if you just avoid the room? But often I think with triggers, you can't avoid them because they will pop up in one way or another in your life. So often I think you need to deal with them, right?
Yes. And I look at it as stages, right? So like, you know, the first stage where like you're still figuring out, okay, what's going on with me? Why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. You identify, okay, I'm triggered by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. While you're going through your discovery process or like healing journey, to start with, avoid your triggers and then learn to face your triggers, then learn to change the triggers or be at peace with them. So it's like stages.
Yes.
But while you're still working on that journey, the healing journey, it's better to avoid them.
Okay. So that's the initial, because you won't be able to, you need to be able to
so like
heal.
if we're talking about a person being a trigger, right? A teacher or your boss perhaps, while you recognized, okay, like this person triggers me, right? The initial and first step should be, okay, I'll try to avoid any conflict with that person while I deal with what's going on with me, right? And then you can seek professional help or like work on like what's going on, or try to make peace with the person, resolve that conflict. But until that happens, it might not be a good idea to be exposed to that trigger.
So I suppose, okay, so let's take the boss example. You know, your boss triggers you, and you will try to avoid conflict. But how do you, I guess, heal from that so you can? How do you stop your boss triggering you, basically?
I'm very sure like we see so many examples in real life similar to that. Maybe ourselves went through that. You can either speak with the boss and try to create peace, resolve the dispute or the conflict. That may not be possible. Workplace mediation can be a solution. If that's not possible, you can leave the job. Right? So like you explore what are the options there. And if no option is possible, then you leave the job.
What if the person triggering you is like a family member?
Like your parent.
Your parent, let's say parents, they're triggering you, or your spouse. You know, it's something that they do that triggers you, and you obviously you value that relationship. I guess walking away from it is not the best option.
No, of course.
So how
it can be in some cases. It depends on what's going on. But like, okay, so like when we're talking about a trigger, what a trigger is? A trigger is like, for me, it's like a flashlight, okay, saying something is not right. There is some unresolved issue, okay? So if I am triggered by my spouse or like by one of my parents, then I need to dig deep on like, okay, what's going on?
All right, let me give a scenario. That's really good because we're talking hypotheticals. Say a parent says to, you know, their child can be an adult, mind you, oh, you're still in that same job. You know, just like that. And that triggers something. It's like the triggers of, I suppose it could be, I'm not good enough.
You're not good enough.
So in that situation, you are in the same job. And your mom or dad still has, you know, their view on that. How could you resolve that situation?
Okay. So there are two parts to resolve in that situation. One is therapy, because I would assume if your parent telling you as an adult you're still in that job, right? That parent have said similar things your entire life, right? Things like things that made you feel not good enough. And it doesn't matter what you do, what you achieve is never good enough for your parents. So that would have created the belief that I'm not good enough. So therapy to work on the belief that, you know, I'm enough. So that's one part of it. The second part is, okay, I need to sit and talk with my parent, that I understand you're trying to motivate me. I understand this is coming from a really good place, but this is how I'm interpreting it. This is how I feel about myself when you say these things to me. And you can't have that conversation unless you've done your therapy part. And in some cases you can't have that conversation because the parent does not have the awareness to sit and listen. And in this case, then I would work with my therapist on how do I protect myself from being impacted by these kind of negative comments from my parent, and not let it get into me and hurt me? How can I protect myself that it doesn't matter what my mom or dad say, I love them and everything, but their idea or opinion of me does not impact or reflect who I am and how I see myself?
I think that's a really important point. It might sound obvious, but sometimes we think, I can't help it, or, these emotions, they just come up, it's their fault. The reality is, it sounds like it, we can manage our emotions and we can steer them. Like, we have that, it's quite empowering when you think about it that way, and we need to be aware that it requires some effort and work, right? But it
Lots of work.
lots of work, but it is possible, right?
Yes, it is, because we need to focus on what we can control, not what we can't control. Some of us grow up in a very toxic environment where these toxic comments were coming from everywhere, left, right, and center, right? And then you need to learn how to build a bubble around you, a protection bubble that people's opinion about me does not reflect who I truly am. And I'm protected, and I know that I'm good enough. Doesn't matter what people think of me. One lady said to me once, and I really like her comments, she was like, what people think of me is none of my business. Right? When you start thinking about that, because people will make opinions about you, right? Even the closest people to you, right? Your mom and dad will still see you, the little kid, who struggles with the school or with making a friendship, relationships. So mom and dad will treat you this way. However, like, they don't see how much you have grown, how much work you have done as self-development, self-growth.
Yeah. So I get that's really important. And I just want to move now to the idea of, when you're triggered, which is when you're dysregulated, it can be a very intense moment at that point. And yes, we need to heal, but at that point, how do we manage our emotions?
Yeah.
Because you want that prefrontal cortex to work, basically.
Yes.
You don't want your emotions to drive you.
Yeah.
But how do you calm that system down?
Okay, so there are so many ways.
Good to know.
There's so many ways, but like, what worked for me may not work for you. What worked for you may not work for somebody else. So I want you to take the time and self-explore, what works for you. Try different things. A very common, famous way to calm your nervous system down, because in order for us for the amygdala in order for the emotions to go back and settle, and for the prefrontal cortex to start working back so we can think straight, we need time. Okay? So you can allow time. You can allow yourself to actually feel the feelings instead of oppressing or dismissing these feelings. So many people, they just shove their feelings under the carpet. But what happens, these feelings grow bigger and bigger and bigger, and sometimes it consumes the person.
Okay, what about if it's anger, though? Like, you say express... You
can express your anger in a healthy way.
Okay.
Absolutely. You can hold the pillow and scream in your room while the door is shut so no one hears it. You're releasing that anger. You can go for a run. You can punch a pillow. You can express the anger in a very healthy way without harming anyone. It's very important that without harming anyone, and you do that, in a safe environment. So you can express your feelings in a healthy way. Express your feelings if you can allow them. Feelings are there for a reason, right? Breath work is another really good example where, like, you regulate your breathing and you breathe in a specific way. There are so many different types of breathing to calm your nervous system. You can journal your feelings and talk about what's hurting you. You can talk with a friend that you trust. Venting, yes. You can see your therapist and speak about putting strategies in place. So there are so many ways you can use to regulate yourself. But again, what works for you might not work for me. So I highly encourage people to try different ways and see what works for them.
So you be open. I think that's an important thing too. We have to be open to it, saying, I'm sure there's something out there that works for me. Because if you approach this with skepticism, it's really not going to help, is it? So being open, and there's some of the ideas. I guess, is there one particular one that you find when you talk to your clients that is particularly effective? Just curious. Or is it very specific, person specific?
It's really hard to say like there is one that works all the time, because if a person is angry, I'm trying to say breathe, that will trigger them even more, you know. They will get like, I'm breathing already,
yeah.
you know, like, so what works with some person may not work with the other, but like I receive lots of good feedback about journaling and, you know, writing. People say it's really therapeutic because you're using your muscles and you're using your brain and you're letting out all these emotions, you know, you bring it out from your inside on the papers. So that works for so many people. Talking to a friend is really powerful. We need to be careful not to trauma dump on people, right? Because that can be harmful. But like if we have a trustworthy friend and they are willing to listen and it's a balanced relationship, that is very powerful.
Yeah. And I guess it has to be a friend that is not going to say what you did is wrong, or they have to be a good listener.
You feel safe with, has the capacity to listen, has the time to listen. And as I was saying, it's a balance when it's balanced relationship. So it's like, not, that's the friend I go to whenever I want to talk. That's unbalanced relationship.
Yeah. Give and take. There has to be give and take, as in that you have to be giving something to that friend for you to be taking on them by dumping information on them. Yeah. Okay, so there's some really good strategies there. And so that's a very important part of emotional intelligence, to know where our emotions, where they're coming from, but also managing our emotions.
Yeah.
Another aspect of it, you said, is the other person.
Yes.
So what do we, how's that important in the scheme of emotional intelligence?
Sometimes all what the other person needs when they are emotionally triggered. We're talking about someone who's emotionally triggered, right? So if my friend is emotionally triggered and she's crying and she looks like a mess, or like she's really angry and she's just lashing, sometimes all what that person needs is someone to hold the space for them, someone to make them feel safe so they can let out, you know, whatever feelings and it's a matter of time. It will be over very soon. But holding space is really powerful, Zuleyha. You know, even you don't have to say anything. Sometimes just by making them feel safe, that they can talk and they know that you won't use what you heard against them, that can be really powerful and therapeutic.
With that, is it the idea that they're being, they have a space to talk? Is an important part of that being that they need to feel understood as well? Or is it sometimes, because with journaling, you know, you said that's very important with regulation, the paper doesn't understand you, but just the fact that you're letting it out is you know, very therapeutic. But when you're talking to a friend or, and you want them to feel, I guess, calmer, do they need to know that you empathize,
you get it,
that you get it?
Yeah. Again, not everyone has the ability to understand what if your friend, you know, lost a loved one, right? And you never experienced that. You can't say, I know how you're feeling, or I understand. You don't, right? But just by holding the space for her to talk about her loss, that in itself can be therapeutic. So like, you know, it's like talking therapy. Just by talking about the problem, you can feel better, okay? However, a bonus is if you can actively listen and understand, right? If you can give that friend all of your attention and show them that you get it. And it can happen just by saying, I get it. I understand, right? Just by saying that, if they feel understood, that's a bonus. That's extra, okay? But trust me, just holding the space for them to feel safe and that to feel that they can talk about it and they won't be judged, in itself is therapeutic.
Yes, just on that point, when we're talking about conversations here and having that space, I feel like one of the biggest mistakes we can make is trying to solve it.
Yeah.
As in, you know, like you gave the example of a friend, if I came to you and said, oh, a friend passed away, and if you said, well, you've got another 5 friends, it's okay. You know, we can sometimes, we think, oh, you know, that's going to help them. But, you know, would you agree with me that trying to solve that situation is one of the biggest mistakes?
It can be way more harmful than it's beneficial. And yes, so many people fall in that mistake where like, if we put our problem solving hat straight away when we hear a problem, especially men fall into that trap way more than women.
Must be the way their brain's wired. I don't know.
Yes, because like they're solution focused, you know, they're in the logic mind most of the time, and logic says there is a problem, we need a solution, right? But what happens is that most of the time when a person is having a problem, especially if it's the loss of a loved one, what a person need to grieve is they need to talk about the person they lost. Don't give them solutions. Giving a solution can be way more harmful than it is beneficial. I would actually advise everyone that only give solution if you are asked for a solution. Even if I come to you with a problem and I say, Zuleyha, I'm facing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you listen to me and you hold the space and you want to help me, I wouldn't suggest you come up with solutions. I would suggest try to explore with your friend what solutions they have for their problem. People in most of the time, people do have solutions. They just need to talk it out to find it, right? So by talking, it comes to them. Yes. Okay, I know exactly what I need to do now after talking to you. Thank you so much. And they will thank you for it, you know.
And you're like, I was just listening. But that in itself is a big part of them having, you know, being able to find that solution. Because
it can get really messy in our heads, right? So by talking, it's kind of like it organizes the thoughts and you find the solution. So I would encourage everyone to support your friends to find their own solutions. That's more empowering. We're not empowering people by giving them solutions. And by jumping to solutions without even listening, holding space, understanding, that will make them feel like, oh, what are you doing? I didn't need that. I just wanted someone to listen. It's disempowering.
Yeah. Such an important part of it. I guess these are such fundamental, principles in a way that can transform communication.
Absolutely.
And they're not that difficult. We just have to know, because that sometimes it doesn't come to us naturally because we may not have had those skills growing up or we weren't exposed to that. But it can transform our communication with people. Absolutely. And out there for our connection with people.
And I do believe that every skill is learnable. These are skills and we can learn it if we really want to. You're not born with it. Some people are, they're very lucky. But like majority of people, they're not born with it. So if you want to learn it, you can. It's a skill.
It's a skill that can be learned. Okay, there's so much we could say, but we might wrap it up there. Is there any, one final thing you would want to say about emotional intelligence, like a take-home message?
You can avoid so many difficult situations. You can avoid a lot of conflict by being emotionally intelligent and by understanding your own emotions and managing them. And I'm just going to very quickly recap the steps. Recognize how you're feeling. Where are you feeling it in your body? Give it a name. Allow yourself to feel that feeling. So don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it. Allow yourself, as we said, like you can express your feeling, including anger, in a very healthy way. Try to understand what triggers you. What are your triggers? And then try to work out, okay, what you're going to do about these triggers. And look after yourself. Nurture yourself. Try to surround yourself with good company, people who understand and support you through that hard journey called life.
Great advice and great summary. Thank you for joining us today, Rand. Inshallah, see you next time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.